You want to hear what Draymond said about Pat Beverley?
I mean, I would love to.
I know you do love yourself some
I heard
Draymond.
it earlier, and part of me was like, the gall. But then I stepped back and I thought, you know what? Good for you, Draymond.
I've only heard like pieces of this. It's sort of like been in the background. I haven't really done a deep dive, but I think this is always fun for me. I'd love to hear where everybody is when Draymond speaks, because it feels like every time he talks, there's something smart in there, and then there'll be something that absolutely drives the top of everyone's heads to fly off like they used to do in the commercials. You got steam flying out of the ears, all of that stuff. Is this one of those things? This is, of course, from the Draymond Green Show. Do you subscribe to his pod? Because you can only listen to this if you subscribe to his pod. So everybody, if you don't subscribe to the pod, close your ears. You're not allowed to talk to Draymond. All right, here's what he said.
Pat Bev threw a ball at a fan last night. Pat keep having these instances after they lose, like in these playoff games. That one might have been crazier than the CP push because it opens up an entirely different can of worms. Like, Adam's going to have a problem on his hands with this one because it's about as close as you can get to going in the stands. That is forbidden for us. Then Pat didn't follow it up very well because he followed it up with getting into it with the female reporter about not subscribing to his podcast.
You subscribe to my pod?
Do I subscribe to you? I do not.
So you can't interview me then.
I ain't never heard somebody say, if you ain't subscribed to my podcast, don't ask me a question. I actually try to take the complete opposite approach because I am very appreciative of the NBA supporting podcasts the way they do. Pat, you can't keep having these moments, man, at the end of these losses. You're starting to look like the kid that's going to grab the ball and say, I'm going home. This is, I can't play. We out of here. We leaving the park. It's my ball. Come on, Pat.
Come on, Pat.
Okay, this might be my favorite audio of the week. Come on, Pat.
Up an entirely different can of worms.
Yeah. First of all, Draymond might have tipped a couple back last night because he's feeling a little raspy up in here.
Yeah.
Entirely different.
Entirely. Okay, Doc Rivers showed up and is a guest on Draymond's pod. That's number one. Number two, I already know the line that's going to tick people off. I already know. Pat, you can't keep having these instances, man.
Right.
You can't be having these outbursts. Who do you think you are?
Right.
Can't do that in the NBA.
You're trying to steal my bit. I'm the guy with repeat instances. That's what I do.
Well, hold on now. Am I being the latest edition of Homer Willard? Tell me, am I?
Homie.
I find these two things to be as different as peanut butter and jelly. They could not be more different.
What, the instances?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The instances. No, but what Draymond Green clearly struggles with and is out of line, and what Patrick Beverley struggles with and is out of line. If you notice, because Draymond Green has been called a bully many, many times in his life. Guess what? Bullies don't choke 7-footers. Bullies throw balls at women in the stands. Bullies prevent media members, 5'2" media members, from talking to him because they don't subscribe to his pod. That's a bully.
Bullies punch 22-year-old teammates because they can.
Look.
And bullies do choke out 7-footers who are European and soft.
Well, that's...
I'm just telling you.
I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it.
I'm just telling you.
You're never going to get me to say these things are okay.
I'm not saying that these two things are the same.
Yeah,
I don't want you to, you can do whatever you want, but I bristle at the notion that Draymond is not a bully because he hasn't thrown a ball at somebody.
Not like Patrick Beverley. Not like Patrick Beverley. And why are we acting like Jordan Poole is some flower that can't defend himself? That was an awful, awful thing. But a bully is someone who doesn't pick on someone his own size. Jordan Poole is that size.
He's not his size.
Oh, gosh, Dibs, you get the point.
I get the point.
He's 2 inches smaller. He's an NBA player.
Sure.
And for me, out of line on the court and out of line off the court are two very different things.
I agree with you there.
And that's my only point. It's why I can look at Draymond and go, yeah, I didn't like that. I get why you don't like him. But I'm not going to go to the get Draymond out of town parade. It's the same reason that LeBron James doesn't really bother me. Do I like the antics on the court? Flopping around, screaming at the ref at every call? No, it's not great. But what you have on LeBron's career is that you didn't like his little show that he did when he was a free agent because you thought it was narcissistic. And I think it's funny when people go, God, what a narcissist. I'm like, he's one of two of the best basketball players in the history of the world. Pardon him if he's got a little bit of an ego. I mean, my God, the fishbowl in which he lives, I don't envy it. And I would find it like, who would you be if you were LeBron? Like, what kind of ego would you have? How would you conduct yourself? Do you think you might fall prey every now and again to looking like a narcissist?
Of course.
When in actuality, you are a global icon who can't leave the house without people chasing you like you're the Jackson 5.
It's difficult to not go that route, but you look at Steph Curry, and he doesn't give off narcissism vibes almost ever.
And he is one of one.
Exactly.
He is as special as they come, and he is why I made the point I made last week. I'd rather lose than trade him.
Right, because he's that special.
I do not care. We can go 10-72, and if he's on the team, I'm buying a ticket.
Those two things, Beverley and Draymond, they're similar in many, many ways with the way they carry on the court and some of the things that they've done on the court. But what Patrick Beverley did last night is beyond the pale. And Draymond's right when he says Adam Silver is going to have a problem. He's got a problem on his hands, and the problem is Patrick Beverley, and he's going to solve the problem with a very, very harsh punishment, because we've seen not a lot of incidents over the years. And think about it, Mark, as close as fans are in the NBA, It's not baseball where there's a big net now around the majority of the lower deck, or in football where you'd have to go over the side of the stands and down on the sideline to really get involved. And even the kicker is going to whoop your ass.
I mean, like
if you're coming out as drunk guy, the holder is taking you apart.
Well,
the littlest dude on the team is taking you down within 4.3 seconds.
In football, you're lucky if you could even get a football player to hear you. Football games are so loud. The whole thing is it's just a different experience. You're right. Like
it's amazing we haven't had more of these, is my point.
You're 100% right. Now, usually the people who are sitting there right next to the bench have so many billions of dollars that usually lends them to act a certain way. You don't have a lot of Spike Lees. There's not a lot of those in the world where you're like, I can afford to put my feet on the hardwood, watch this game, and I'm going to stand up, point my finger into other team's face, and scream and yell and heckle. That's not the norm. But you're 100% right. You watch an NBA game, I do still think it's the oddest thing. I think it's the oddest thing, one of the oddest things in sports that you're like, it's like player,
Dude,
player,
totally
assistant coach, player, assistant coach, person. What the hell is that?
Official score, like, media guy.
Who got that ticket? Why are you sitting there? Why are your knees hitting Steve Kerr's during a game? It's very strange to me.
It's strange, but it makes perfect sense because of the almighty dollar. And if you're the Golden State Warriors or any other team, and think about the Warriors in Chase Center right now, you've got the whole side where there's probably 50 courtside seats when you go baseline to baseline, maybe 50 roughly. And then the other side, how do we make a little bit more money? Let's squeeze in another 8 to 10. So between the bench and the scores table, if we could fit 4 here and 4 over there, think about how much money that would be.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that the media was all sitting down there too.
That's right.
And there are very few arenas left now that will do that because they've realized that, like, I don't know, on an annual basis, what's one of those seats worth? One. What's one seat down there at the floor worth?
A season ticket for 41 games, courtside at Chase, probably, I was going to say $100,000, just as a ballpark.
I feel like at least. What does that
would
cost?
Be $2,000 a ticket. $2,000 a game.
Yeah. I don't think that's like
2,000 times 41 would be
I actually think they might be. I mean, depending on the team, the situation, are you adding playoffs in? A lot of those are more than that. A lot of them.
If it's $2,500 a game, you're talking about $100,000. Plus the seat license, if there is such a fee, and all the rest.
So
of it.
they're not giving that up anymore. They're not giving that up for a free seat anymore.
Exactly.
So yeah, I get it. But yeah, this one for me, it just hits different. And I think we do wonder, like, when you hear Draymond Green speak on this, how does it make you feel? Like, does that feel hypocritical, or do you buy it? And I think both you and I, maybe to varying degrees, but we both buy it. And does that make us? Is that a Homer take? Is that a Draymond thing? Only because he's a Warrior? I don't know. Like, I look at people like Draymond, and I actually feel like there are a lot of them in sports. There's a lot of heels. There's plenty of heels, and you like them or you tolerate them if they play for your team, and you hate them if they don't. There are certain players in sports that just get booed wherever they go. Baseball needs more of them, by the way.
Yeah.
Bryce Harper's got a little bit of that. Got a little bit of that going on. You know what I mean? And he gets booed when he comes here. Part of it was the Hunter Strickland thing. Part of it is that he didn't sign here, which is funny because it makes my point. He's a heel. You boo him. But boy, would you have loved it if he was patrolling right field. But that's the heel thing for me, is based on people who keep it on the field, on the court.
Right.
If you do stuff that I think is out of line, basically anyone who played for the Pistons in the 80s and 90s and most of the Knicks, I thought you're all out of line. You're all out of line.
It's the nature of the league back then, though.
But how many of you then brought a gun to the bar after the game and kept threatening people?
Right.
I'm sorry. That's different to me.
It's different, and that's why I don't think that Draymond is being hypocritical, and I have been one of the biggest Draymond, quote-unquote, haters in the Bay and on the station. I don't love Draymond Green's act, his antics, and all the rest of it, but what Patrick Beverley did last night is far beyond anything that Draymond ever did. When Draymond chokes Rudy Gobert is a professional basketball player. When he flail kicked Steven Adams and he body slammed Michael Beasley and he groin punched LeBron James and he sucker punched Jordan Poole and I could run down all the list of all the things he's done.
Yeah.
When he flail slapped Yusuf Nurkic, that's all pro athlete on pro athlete. Inexcusable, unforgivable, some would say. Yes. But when you fire the ball in the crowd, not once, but twice, and the paying patrons, that to me is way worse than anything Draymond's ever done. And that's why I think the punishment will be even more severe than what Draymond got last time.
Should be.
I just looked it up. Dennis Rodman got 11 games.
For what?
Kicking the camera person in the balls.
Okay.
And that was in 1997. Can I not say kicked him in the balls?
No, you can't.
I mean, he might have missed, but you remember that, right? He got tangled up under the hoop.
I do. Yeah, he got tangled up. Yeah, he got frustrated.
Right.
That to me is maybe somewhere in between, because the camera person is employed and he got tangled up within the framework of playing basketball.
True. Yeah.
And then the frustration comes out. I understand the emotions. I really do. They must be absurd. I can't even, and I do. I try to take this into account, especially those of us who are paid to talk about these people, even though we've never experienced what they experience. I cannot imagine, and I know that this, like, you take this usually different than I do, but Steph Curry on a nightly basis gets paid about, like, if we do, I mean, he's getting paid for practice and all that stuff, but
$500,000.
Yeah, okay. $500,000
to dribble, shoot.
To go play that game. And so we go, good Lord, is that privileged? That is just some unbelievable. Now, why would anyone have sympathy or compassion, or why would you even think this way? I think about it also this way, though. What would it be like? What would it be like to be in the middle of an arena, a place of show, and know that someone had just given you $500,000? And people were busting their ass. They were leaving work early. They were sitting in traffic. They were paying $50 to $75 just to find a place to leave their car, to find their way into this building to see you perform. And you have got to perform well. And there's no script. And there are 12 highly paid professionals also in the building trying to make you perform poorly. That feels very, very pressurized to me. That, like, the emotions that go into that when then it doesn't go well, when you miss the big shot, when you turn the ball over in a tie game with a minute and a half to go. I would like what's on your shoulders when you hear those 20,000 people groan or head for the exits early. My God, the come down would be absolutely intense, I feel like. And so that's why I give some nod to the emotional things that then happen in that environment when it's not going well. But my goodness, to then turn that onto the people who are busting their ass and spending their money to go watch you perform or cover you as you perform, to turn it on them as opposed to those who are out there with you, that to me, we are in a completely different arena. So I know a lot of you won't separate this. I couldn't separate it more. I don't even see any overlap. The most Draymond Green has ever done with a crowd is rile them up with his arms. That's it. Boston, Sacramento, what have you. I don't even know
if he's flipped a crowd off before.
I don't seem to remember that.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, some verbal bombs, but that's just, talk and back and forth. And yeah, I get what you're saying about the pressure and all the rest of it. But as Draymond said in his podcast, there's certain things that you can't do. And the one thing you can't do is go into the crowd. And Pat Bev did not go into the crowd, but he involved the crowd in an aggressive act by throwing the ball into the crowd. That's something that you can't do. And imagine a baseball player if they just took a ball and rifled it at somebody, somebody who was heckling them or threw a bat or did something crazy like that.
I think that's happened. There's been a player not at the fan, but they've thrown a ball in frustration into the fan into the stands, and a fan got hurt. And my goodness, there were lawsuits and all.